All right, I just wanted to show something interesting here. It's been a very warm day today. This is the temperature outside right now. It says it's 84 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a little over 90 earlier, but the sun had went behind some clouds recently, so the temperature dropped a little bit here, but it is towards the end of the day, so the temperature is dropping anyways. We haven't had a lot of 90 plus degree days this summer. I wanted to show this though. So there's the air temperature. I'm going to show you this is an insta-read thermometer, by the way. So I'm going to show the surface temperature of the water here. There it is. So the surface temperature of the water is pretty much the same as the air temperature right now. And I've noticed that throughout the summer here, where I would test the water temperature on the surface anyways. And it would pretty closely match the temperature of the air temperature most of the time. It depends on how sunny it was, or how long it was warm for, I guess. So if I go down just a little bit, still 84 degrees. That is about a foot below the surface. Now watch this here. So we're about a foot below the surface. You see the temperature moving there? And this pond is about 3 feet deep from grade, but it's more like 2.5 feet from the surface of the water. So you can see the well area down here where it's deeper right in the middle there. And now the temperature probe is just barely starting to touch that area. Now I'm going to go down a little deeper. Now remember, we're already about 12 inches down, maybe a little more than, maybe 14 inches down right now. I'm going to go down a little bit deeper, and you can see the temperature barely really changed much in that 12 inches or 14 inches. Go down deeper, you can see how it goes down rapidly. Look at that. And we are now at the bottom there, which is not really that much deeper. It's 74 degrees. It's a 10-degree temperature difference by just a short distance from that area to the bottom. So we're really only talking about in the range of, maybe 12 to 13 inches or so deeper than what I just showed you. And that's interesting. If I pull it back up, you'll see come back up to the surface, and that is about 1 inch below the surface there. So when I stick my hand down there, it's actually deeper than it looks, so it's hard to reach. I can't even reach to the bottom of that from here, but if I stick my hand down there, you can feel that temperature change. So when I stick my hand down there right to about this rock right here, it's roughly the same temperature. It's, I would call it warm. As soon as I go past that rock right there where it goes into the deeper part, there's a thermocline there. And you saw that on this thermometer, and it's a huge difference. Basically one part of my hand can be in the cold water and the other part of my hand can be in the hotter water. It is a very distinct thermocline in there. And I'm actually surprised because these goldfish are cold water fish, and they seem to hang out on the surface here, especially during the summer. They're always up in the shallow areas where it's hotter, and they don't really hang out down in the bottom all that much. They love the cave. That cave goes about 2 feet back. They'll hang out there sometimes, but for the most part, they're actually hanging closer to the surface, which is kind of surprising. I know some fish like to hang out in deeper waters during the day, but these fish don't seem to be doing that. I just want to show that. I thought it was kind of interesting to show the temperature difference there. Obviously, I can't really explain how it feels other than what I said with my hand, but it's a very distinct plane in that water there where the temperature changes immediately, and all the colder water sits right down at the bottom, and that's partially because of the depth, but also because of the flow here, because there's tiers that go down, and that's basically a pit, and then the upper tiers have surface flow that runs over towards the inlet for the pump, the intake bay there, skimmer bay, whatever you want to call it. So I just wanted to show that, thought it was interesting, and that's actually going to play into winter time when the temperature actually should be much warmer down there than the surface temperature, and that's why I'm going to have an aerator in there for the winter to keep the fish alive. But we'll take this video and transition into that a little later on when it's winter, I guess. I also wanted to point out something that I really kind of forgot to record, and that is the algae issue that I had developed fairly recently within the past couple of weeks. Now, it's already taken care of. I don't have any video of that of how bad it actually was getting. So I started having some hair algae, which I kept pulling out here and there, which wasn't really all that bad. It was very easy to pull out because it stayed together. I'm sorry, string algae. Then I started developing a hair algae, which is a much finer stuff that just kind of falls apart. It's almost jelly-like. I don't really have any to show you right now of how bad it was, but if you look, you know, kind of like how it looks like right now, it's really hard to see on camera because of the reflections and everything. But you can kind of see the algae kind of hanging off the rocks here. And a lot of these rocks actually have that. Just basically take that and multiply that by like 20. You know, it was that much and just continually expanding, and it was floating all around the water, little pieces of it here and there, clogging up my filter by the hour. Not really so much the filter, but the net pots I have sitting there with some sponge on there. It would clog it up within a few hours after cleaning it out, or before that even. I couldn't keep them clean. So what I did is I just used an algicide, which I think was from API, just pond algicide, and it seems to work really, really well. It actually pretty much worked immediately. Like within a few hours, the algae started turning from a dark green to a more of a brownish color, and it pretty much cleared up within a few days. But the reason why I got algae, I'm pretty sure, was because of this. Some of you who followed this video or these videos in my conversations here saw that I put in this well. This is a shallow well. This goes down 28 feet. I dug it basically by hand with a hand auger. And this pump here, it works. You can see I just pump it right here. You might have saw the water was like a little bit dark color there initially. That's just because of the tannins from the leather seals in there, but it's actually clean water. So I put in this hand pump mostly just for decoration, to cover up the well part that's inside here. And then you can kind of see what's going on in there. There's the well. That pipe that you saw coming out of there runs over here, and you can see here I removed the pump. There was a sprinkler pump basically hooked up to this. This was the inlet, and I had that hose there as the outlet. And then I had it plugged into my outlet over there with a smart switch. I had it come on every single day for 1 minute at the same time. And it would put 8 gallons from the well into the pond. The problem is that well, when I dug it, I had no idea how pure the water would be deep underground there. It is filtered in a sand layer, but it's also full of minerals, mainly a lot of calcium. Nothing bad, but just a lot of minerals in that water, the 1,200 parts per million. And I was putting that into the pond, during the summer, and it would be, the water evaporates, the minerals don't evaporate, the water evaporates, and then I add more to it. It's just, I talked about this in discussions before about my water replenishment plan as far as, what I was going to do, and I thought this was probably the worst idea, was to put in a well to refill the pond, just because of the total dissolved solids that are in the water that are from the groundwater. If it was a deeper well, like going down to the bedrock where the water was more pure, less parts per million, it probably would have been fine. But this was actually probably the worst idea in my case because of the high mineral content. So it was just adding more and more and more, basically nutrients to the pond. So the algae was starting to bloom from that. As I said, other wells might be better if you have low TDS. It's probably fine. But in my case, it was bad. Now my tap water is about 140 parts per million, so way, way less. So what I basically did here is I hooked up just a regular sprinkler timer right here, and then I just ran the hose under the gravel, and that runs over and comes out behind there and just wraps around the back, and then it goes into here. And this is just an RV filter. It's basically just a bunch of carbon and a small mesh filter on the other side there. That's all it really is. So it just filters out chlorines. Not so much chloramines, even though it says it does. It may filter out a little bit, but it's going to leave behind ammonia, as far as I know. But so it just runs through there slowly, and I have it set to run for 5 minutes, and it comes out the other end as a trickle. So I basically just reuse exactly how I had it set up with that tube that goes underground there. It goes into a conduit underneath the threshold there, and it comes out in the same exact spot, which is right here. It just kind of sprays it into the filter area. So I'm using the house water basically now to do that. And I had it pretty much set up so that it comes out and it refills about 8 gallons a day basically. I just had to measure it for, with a measuring cup and timed it. It's not coming out at full pressure. I just have it coming out at a trickle purposely with the valve. This here is capped off so the well can actually pull a vacuum. Otherwise it wouldn't if I didn't have that capped off. But anyways, that's what I changed there. And I'm going to continue to use the algicide in the pond until I'm comfortable with stopping using it to make sure the algae is under control. It's going to take a while for the rainwater to refill the pond and for it to drain out and to basically, have nature do the water changes for me, even though I did pump out quite a bit already because of other situations here. You probably saw this over here. This is temporary. This has nothing to do with the pond. I'm having some drainage issues. That's all I'm going to say about that. And I had to pump water out of the pond. I was using the pond sort of as a retention basin, so the water would go into the pond and stay in the pond and not overflow, and then go into my French drain, which then goes down to the sewer pipes underground, or the storm drainage, I should say. So basically, I did do some water changes while I pumped the water out, and it refilled with rain very quickly. So nature is going to keep adding more pure water to this, and it's going to overflow, and the TDS in the water is going to slowly go back down, and then eventually when it gets down to a lower TDS, I'll probably stop using the algicide, and we'll see how that goes. My house water shouldn't be contributing to much algae at all, because I've used the same house water for my fish tanks, and I don't have any issues there. So anyways, yeah, this pump is now just a pump. The valve is continuously open, so basically just still works, and the well is really not very useful at this point. It's just a, I don't know, amenity, whatever you want to call it. It's a functional decoration, I guess. I don't really need it, but I guess if there's ever an apocalypse, we have no water, well, I can always pump some out of the ground if I had to. So I guess it's a sort of a backup solution. Anyways, we'll come back with this video, and we'll show kind of what's going on during the winter, and we'll do a temperature measurement like I said in the beginning of this video. All right, we are approaching the start of fall here. It's October in Northeast Ohio, and I've been dealing with some algae issues in the pond here for a little while now. As you can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, but there is quite a bit of hair algae and string algae. They're kind of intermixed. I had a bunch of string algae that was growing up in the wetland area, which I recently removed, and most of the stuff, most of the algae is kind of growing down in the deeper parts. I guess you would call it the well area of the pond, the deeper bits. So I've been using this API Alga Fix for about the past month, and I've been dosing it every 3 days as recommended on the bottle here, until it's under control, which then you would go to once a week. But I would say it's not really under control, because even with adding that to the proper amount, it's still not really getting rid of it. I would say it's keeping it from expanding and getting out of control, but it's definitely not really where I'd want it to be. If it stayed like this, I wouldn't really mind, but if I stop using it, it's gonna just get worse. And the whole reason I believe this started is because my well here, I dug that well, and the water coming out of there is very high TDS. It's about 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million. A lot of minerals in that water. The test kit that I have doesn't test for silicates or phosphates, and I don't believe there's any phosphates down that deep in the ground. I mean, I guess it's possible, maybe. I doubt it though. But it's quite possible there could be silicates in there, and both of those things algae loves to eat off of. I don't put any food in this pond, and there's no runoff from the land here going into the pond. So it's just really odd to me that I have all this algae growing, and it didn't really start happening until I started putting the well water in the pond to replenish the evaporation. And during the summer, I was having to add at least 8 gallons a day to compensate for the evaporation per day. And that was adding quite a bit of minerals into the water. And that's the only thing I can think of as the reason why it was started. Now, I haven't done any actual water changes on this. I've been trying to rely on the rain to kind of I guess, dilute it. But we haven't had a lot of rain for quite a while, so the amount of rain that went in here wasn't enough. I've been having to use regular house water to replenish the water, which has a very, very low TDS, but still, it could be adding silicates in there as well. So what I'm going to do here is, I bought this a really long time ago, this PhosGuard stuff, and all this really does is absorb phosphates and silicates. And I bought this many years ago for my aquariums. I never used it, never even opened it, and I had it sitting in the cabinet. And I said, you know what? Let's try that. So I got these little baggies here that I've had these little baggies for a while, and I've reused them. So the amount I'm actually using here is 1 cup, or actually it's 2 cups, which should be enough to take care of this volume of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put each one of these baggies, I got 2 of them down here, and you can see I have 2 net pots here with sponges on top. That's the entrance to the pump that's down inside the 5-gallon bucket under the ground there, and under the water. So I'm going to put those in the net pots, and then we'll kind of see what happens. They have to be in there for 4 days. We'll see if this actually reduces the algae growth. It is getting close to the end of October here, and this is the temperature this morning. It's 44 degrees Fahrenheit. It was down to about 38 earlier before the sun came up, which you can see the sun's up now, but it's not really hitting the water yet. And it's going to get up to, I think, about 60 degrees today later on. But since we're below 40 degrees overnight anyways, I wanted to see what the temperature of the water is, and it should be pretty close to maybe 40, I'm guessing, if not lower, at least on the surface. But mainly I want to see what the temperature is down lower in it. So here we go, we're going to dip it in. All right, we're in the water. Okay, so that's surprising. We haven't had a lot of sun, and the surface temperature of the water is still above 50, even when the air temperature is much colder. So it's held temperature. That's just surface. Let's dip it down all the way to the bottom. Okay, that's the bottom. Huh, and it's still 50. It's the same temperature. I'm surprised. Maybe that's because the temperature down to the bottom there is actually warmer, and then it's kind of mixing with the temperature closer to the surface. That's probably what's happening, is my guess. That's why the surface is warmer, because we haven't, I mean, it's been raining and we haven't had any sun for a while to even warm it up. And normally the surface temperature of this water drops down rather quickly in less than a day. It's usually very close to ambient. So yeah, that's probably what's happening. We'll have to come back another time to actually confirm that when it's even colder. Okay, I left these, I forget what you call them now. Phossorb. I left the Phossorb in there for about 3 weeks. This is way longer than you would normally keep it in. And that's partly because I didn't have these like in direct flow. They're just kind of sitting in the net pots, so the water can kind of flow around them as well. So if this was in the direct path of flow, like say in one of the pipes where it has to flow through it, I would have left it in there for a shorter time. But I decided to leave it in there longer to make sure that most of the water can be filtered through this stuff. And you can see it's actually spent. That's normal. It would normally turn brown when it's absorbed a lot of pretty much all that it can anyways. Probably won't use this stuff again. I didn't really notice any difference in the algae. You can see it's very green. And when I was cleaning the leaves out of here, over there in that shallow area, there was a lot of that, like, it's not slime algae, but it's slimy. It's like hair algae, but it's really like slimy. The stuff down there is more hair algae. They're very similar, but the hair algae is, or string algae is, well, it's kind of what it sounds like. It's stringy, so it holds together better. The other stuff kind of just falls apart when you try to grab it, and it's just like a bunch of slime. Anyways, yeah, it's fall here, and I was just throwing a lot of these leaves out of the pond. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of trees that are very close to the pond here, but you see the neighbors over there, they have tons of oak trees, and you can see all the leaves down there. I actually just came home and ran the mower over and mulched all the ones that fell in my yard, and everywhere else, basically. It's a lot easier to mulch them. But fall is my least favorite season of the year. Some people might say winter. Fall is my least favorite season because, well,
there's just a lot of leaves to clean up. And I think people who say that fall is beautiful probably don't have to worry about cleaning up too much leaves themselves anyways. I could be wrong. That's just me, though. I get so tired of it, and I grew up cleaning up so many leaves that I just wanted to burn them all instead of trying to clean them up. But yeah, so you can see there's the neighbor's yard there, and in the back area of my yard, I get just as many from that big maple tree. But this is one of the things that I really don't like about having the pond is because of fall and all the leaves that get into it. So far, there hasn't been too many, but it's just another task, another chore that I got to do. If we didn't have that, it really wouldn't be a whole lot I'd have to do to this, but having to clean all those leaves out of there and probably have to do it again and another time after that before winter hits, or at least in the spring. But that's it for this little update. We'll come back and see what happens here. Oh, and I will be testing the water temperature. It is getting colder. We had freezing temperatures last night. And eventually, when the water actually does start freezing on the surface, like especially the waterfall area there, I'll be turning the pump off. Once the pump is off, I'll be testing the water temperature down deeper versus the surface temperature, because as of right now, they're going to be all pretty similar just because of the flow. All right, we'll come back when that happens. It is now the end of November, or close to the end anyways, and here's the pond. As you can see, there is plenty of leaves collecting here again. And this is probably going to be like the 7th time I've had to clean the leaves out of this darn pond, even when there's hardly any trees nearby, but the wind just blows them over here. This doesn't look like a lot, and it isn't. I've cleaned out more than that on a few occasions where they accumulate. It's kind of important to not let them sit in there too long because they absorb water and then they sink, and then it's harder to clean them out. I'd rather clean them out when they're floating. And for the most part, the intake bay over here, they flow towards this area, so the majority of them I can just pull out right over here. If they sink in the intake bay, that's not really that deep at all. I can just easily get those out. But if they sink down there, that's a different story. I just prefer to get them out as soon as I can. Also, if I let them sink down in there and I don't clean them out, they decay, and then that just is more food for algae to grow. A couple leaves here and there is not a big deal, but this is a chore, and it just kind of has to be done. Anyways, so here is the temperature outside right now. It's 48 degrees Fahrenheit. I suspect the surface of the water temperature to be probably close to that. We've had some pretty large temperature fluctuations between night and day recently, depending on clouds and rain and the sun and all that stuff. So let's see, I'll just dip it down in here. There's the surface. Okay. So I guess I kind of expected that. It's slightly warmer. We did have a little bit of sun today, so it kind of helped. Plus the ground temperature, I'm assuming, is helping as well. And let's sink this down all the way down to the bottom here and see what the bottom temperature is. Okay, so it didn't really change a whole lot. As a matter of fact, it's actually colder by 2 degrees. It's 50 degrees down there. I guess that makes sense because the colder water is going to sink towards the bottom, and if the sun was out, the surface, the rocks and the area up there is shallow, so it's going to absorb some of the water, or some of the heat from the sun anyways, and it just kind of flows, and most of it's going to travel along the surface. And it has been colder, so I mean, we've been down in the upper 30s, and I think almost close to freezing at least once so far in this past month. I wanted to actually measure this when it got colder. I was hoping it would get down to like in the low 30s, maybe high 20s, and measure the temperature at the bottom versus the surface temperature. But I haven't really had any days like that, and it's getting close to having to actually pull the pump out. And that's the point of this little segment of this video here is today I'm going to be taking the pump out of there. That's, as I've said before, that's a 5-gallon bucket. There's a lid on it with the 2 net pots for the filter to filter the debris out so it doesn't go through the piping. So it's just a lid I got to pull off, and then I pull the pump out of there, and then I detach it from the out port there. It's a elbow that just comes off the pipe, so it just makes it real easy. I'm pretty much going to pull it up out of the bucket there, drain the water out of it, and then just set it up on the rock and just leave it there. As long as there's no water in it, the freezing temperatures aren't going to hurt it. It just can't be in the water and be frozen, and it can't expand, and then it'll break the pump. So it just has to come out. I don't even know if it would actually freeze down in the bottom of that bucket, being as deep as it is in the ground. I don't want to take any chances though. So in other words, basically that's coming out today, and that whole wetlands area, the wetlands filter area, is going to be shut off, and it's been running for well, since the beginning of spring. So it's been running for many months continuously, and it's going to be shut off today, and then it's going to stay off, and that whole area is going to be basically dry. There'll be water underneath the rocks there, but the surface will be basically dry. Anyways, I have a aerator air pump up here, just hanging up here out of the weather and off the ground, and I just have the manifold here, and so I got one pipe coming out of the manifold, and then I have another port over here. I'm actually the wrong side of it. I have another port right here, which is slightly open. This is how I adjust the airflow out of the air stone. So this is the valve where the tube is coming out of there for the air stone. If I was to turn this down and close it to adjust the airflow, that would put too much back pressure on the pump, so that's not good. So the best way to control the pressure is actually to allow more pressure out of the manifold, so less pressure goes through the tube, and that way it doesn't put extra stress on the pump. It actually really relieves some of the stress anyways. So the tube goes down there. Currently the air stone is actually on the bottom, and I have not been using it. I don't want to pull the warmer water up towards the surface and then cool the ground down below there. I want to try to keep that consistent. So basically the best way to do this is actually to run the air stone at about half depth. So you see there's a ledge here. See that rock there? There's a rock there with algae, and there's a rock there with less algae. So kind of right between those two stones is where the air stone will need to go, and then everything below that will be undisturbed water. So the air stone is basically just, so when the water starts to freeze on the surface, it will allow a hole in the ice to stay open so that any gases can come out of the water and the fish, well, don't die, basically. So I'm going to get to doing all this, and I'll kind of show you what I did when I'm done. Okay, the water is now shut off, or at least, the pump is. And you can see there's a little bit of residual water in there, and I believe that will slowly drain out. It'll trickle out from behind the waterfall, like underneath these rocks, because most of that is higher than that, so it's going to slowly kind of find its way out of there. Over here, I already pulled the baskets out and the screens on top, or the foam anyways, and then you kind of just wash those off real quick, because that's going to be put back on here. But this is the bucket lid here, and it comes off pretty easy, or at least it's supposed to, but it's a little harder to do this with one hand. Let's see here. There we go. Now, this is all these are here. It's just the foam cutouts here, and I just have these sitting basically just on top of these. It's not a big chunk of foam that goes all the way through. Really, this initially was just these collecting any debris from going in there. But when I had put in tiny tadpoles and things like that, I didn't want anything that would get sucked in there that was small, like wildlife type stuff. So I just put those on there. And then I got algae, and these were getting so covered in that algae, I didn't want the algae to go into the plumbing either. So I decided to leave those on there. I prefer they weren't there, but kind of have to do that now. I knew I was doing something wrong. It's definitely easier to get that off without the pots in there hanging down and being in the way. Kind of difficult to see all the way down there. I don't know exactly how deep that is from the surface of the water here, but it's a 5-gallon bucket. I don't remember, I think a 5-gallon bucket is like 14 or 16 inches tall. So then you have another 4 inches on top of that. So, it's probably around 20 inches deep from the surface of the water. I don't really think that the ice will ever freeze that deep in there. Mainly because this bucket is basically in the ground, surrounded by earth. And with it being that deep, really the surface of water around any bodies of water we have in Ohio, I don't think it freezes much more than a foot. Like if it's freezing a foot thick, it's pretty thick. Maybe 18 inches at the most, but that's usually in an open body. This here is surrounded by the ground around it,
So I don't think the ground would allow that to freeze that deep. I will probably periodically check this in the winter, in the coldest parts, if it does get that cold, and I'll see how deep it actually freezes to. And then I'll probably determine if I actually need to pull this pump out in the future, because I really don't, the way this is set up, I don't believe I actually need to pull the pump out. But anyways, I've got my little union here, a coupler. It's just a rubber coupler that attaches to this flex tubing, and then the other end of it goes under the rock, which goes underground, which goes around the entire pond over to the bog area. And I just put this on here for a quick disconnect, because this is a lot easier to pull this out and then just lift the pump up rather than trying to undo something down there under the water. So I'm hoping this comes out real easy. Of course, there's some live plants kind of interweaved in here too. There we go. So now it's detached. And again, these things are all interweaved with living plants. This is obviously fake plants here. I just put it on here to cover up the pipe to, well, kind of to keep the sun off of it, and also to kind of just camouflage it. There we go. Jeez. Okay, so I just lost a rock down in there. I didn't realize it was that interweaved in there. There we go. So it's kind of exactly what I didn't want to happen, was the debris falling down in the bottom of the bucket. Okay, very gently pulling this up here. And then there's the pump. And this, again, this is the first time I've seen this since I put it in here, when whatever month that was, if it was May or June. As you can see, there's quite a few snails all up in there. Those are red ramshorn snails I took out of my fish tank. Most of those are probably dead. Anyways, yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's just going to stay on over here. It'll stay like on the rock or something. Once I make sure all the water is out of this part, if I do need, I'll need to tip it up on the side there. You're probably asking, like, why am I just going to leave it here? Well, the thing is this cord here is a plug, and there's no switch or anything. It's just a straight plug. It goes underneath all these rocks into the, if you follow my other videos, building the pond, there's a bucket here that I just reutilized, which has a hole cut in the side underneath all this, and then there's a downspout pipe that goes through there, up over there, where it plugs in. So I don't want to pull that whole cord out. It's just too much work. Now, there's other ways I can do that, I guess, but I don't see any problem with this just being outside. It's underwater 24/7, so it doesn't matter if it's just sitting out here. I really don't think it's a problem. As long as there's no water in it, really nothing else should really affect it. Of course, it's cold out here, so I got my garbage bag. I'm going to put that over my whole arm since it's pretty deep in there. You know, it's cold. That water's cold. So I just have to put this over my arm like it's some kind of a bag that you put over your arm when you're giving a horse a colonoscopy. All right, we're about 24 hours later now. You could probably hear the buzzing in the video here. That's the aerator I got going. I don't remember if I turned it on in the last segment of the video here, but you can see up here in the bog area, it's completely dry, just like I said it would be. There's still water in there, obviously. It's going to be about here, all the way up or all around there. But it's under the rocks. And there's several gallons of water there. I couldn't really estimate it because of the rocks displace the water volume, but I would imagine it's probably at least 10 or 20 gallons of water that's underneath there, because the bowl actually goes out to the outer edge of those larger rocks. So it's not just in the narrow part here where the water flows. It kind of goes out, but those are all sitting on top of the liner, and it only fills up to a certain point, so it looks like it's less than it actually is. So anyways, obviously no waterfall going, not really any surface movement except for the aerator going right there. That is probably only maybe 20% of what it could do if I want to turn up the aeration. I don't think it's necessary though. But I brought out my temperature probe again, and I want to see what it is. Now, temperature out here, that's not 41 degrees. Let me just dab this in water so it gets down to the actual temperature. It was in the house, so the probe isn't exactly where it should be yet as far as temperature goes. Yeah, so it's going down. That's about right. I'd say it's 37, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And the surface temperature of the water is... Wow, okay, so it's 52. I think that was... No, it's about the... I think that was about the same as it was yesterday. And it's cloudy. The sun hasn't been shining on this at all, so it's holding temperature. Now, what I'm really curious about is it warmer down towards the bottom? I don't think it is. Let's get that temperature probe to sink all the way down there. Nope, it's about the same. Oh, there it is. It's going up just a little bit. That's good news. So yesterday when I measured it, it was actually slightly colder on the bottom, and now it's actually slightly warmer on the bottom. So that means the ground temperature is affecting the water temperature, which is why, with that being almost 3 feet deep at the bottom, why it shouldn't really ever freeze in there, especially the cave underneath there, because the cave goes all the way up to there, and I don't really think that would ever freeze in that cave. I don't know if the aerator is down far enough. I would say it's maybe a little above halfway in depth. I'll just have to adjust that if this freezes over. I'll be monitoring that. But one thing you can also see here is there's more leaves already. I just cleaned these out yesterday and more leaves blew into it. Now, it's not really coming from the trees. It's just coming from out in the yard and other yards and stuff where the wind is basically just blowing it back into the pond. And I'm getting tired of trying to keep up with it. I may just leave it alone and take care of it in the spring. It's just getting too cold. I got the tube there plugged with some foam so that now the critters can get in there, and the same thing with the anti-siphon, which is up there, which I've shown plenty of times before. It's been a couple of days here. I'm not going outside for this, as you can see why. Plus I don't have time. So it is 20 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, and you can see that the pond is starting to freeze over. Well, sort of. So all up over there, that's the waterfall area. That's already been frozen over, and there's a snow building up on top of it already. And then all along the edges, same deal. And then you can kind of see, I wish this camera would focus. It wants to focus on the screen. There we go. So you can kind of see that in this area here, it's freezing, but no snow is building up. And then right over in this area here, there's the aerator. And that's not frozen at all, but you can see the wave is making waves pushing whatever ice forms over to that area. I'm not sure if that's all one solid layer. It probably is because it's so cold out. It's going to be very cold like this for the whole day. I'll come back later on and make a little update and see if it's frozen anymore or anything changes. But so far, the aerator is working. All right, it's been a full day now. This is the outside temperature. It's 25 degrees Fahrenheit. 26, I guess. So it was 20 degrees this morning, and then this is as high as it's gotten, and it's just going to go back down from here. But as you can see here, the pond is, you can see where the ice is formed around there and there, and this looks like some of the snow might have melted on top of there from this morning. Let's go ahead and take a look at the temperature of the water. So surface temperature right now, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. That's right by the aerator. If I put it right over top of the aerator, about the same. Over here, same thing. And I can't go through there. Here's further away from the aerator, same thing. And then down below, you can see the fish down there. They're doing just fine. Let's see what the temperature is all the way at the bottom. There it is, 48 degrees at the bottom of the pond. Probably about the same in the cave down there. And then up here, the surface, 43. So it is warmer at the bottom, as expected. The ground temperature is keeping it warm. But this is only the first day we've had these kind of temperatures in a while. Well, since last winter anyways. Being this cold, but the temperatures are actually going to go back up in the next day here, so
we're going to be back up to where we were before, in the low 30s and 40s. But when January, February comes around, it might be a different story. And then we'll have to just take a look at it at that point. It's the next morning here, and you can see it is 17 degrees Fahrenheit. It is very cold. It's still the end of November. This is not a normal temperature for November, or at least not on an average basis anyways. And then tomorrow, it's going to go up to almost 50, or maybe even above that. And then for the foreseeable forecast, it's going to be in the high 30s, 40s, maybe close to 50, but basically all above freezing. And that's basically what a normal temperature is for end of November and through December. And there's the pond this morning. And you can clearly see there that the bubbler is still working. The rest of it all has a frozen top, but that is still liquid there. So this obviously isn't a great test of, or a great example anyways, of showing how it works just over the period of 2 days with very cold temperatures. We'll take a look in the further months, but for now I'm going to end this video, and then we'll come back and I'll show some more stuff throughout this winter in another video. This video is already long enough. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.